Tom, what have we decided to call this?
I think we're going with Mango Press React.
Mango Press Reacts. That's how organised we are. We didn't even plan the name until now. There's me here, Comrade Fran. There's Tom, who you've just heard. Say hello.
Chairman Fongo, Tom here. Hello, everyone.
We've got Sammy.
Hello, everyone.
We're going to watch the Contrapoints voting video. It's causing a massive Twitter storm. If you just search her name and just read the comments now, she's caused a storm for making a video about voting in the US. So let's just jump straight in. Let's go. Feel free to pause it anytime, guys.
Children, if I have to crawl off the goddamn floor on the morning of November 4th, brush aside the empty wine bottles, and pick up my phone to discover that Caligula Jackson is president for life, I am going to chew my way through the bathroom tile, and I will not stop until I reach the gates of hell. You know what, America? Things have not gone well. We're having a hard time. We are. Between the plague, the quarantine, the oppressive policing, the unrest in the streets, the rising tide of fascism, the criminal negligence of a president who's refused to admit the danger of a disease that has killed 200,000 people and counting. Of course, there's going to be some...
We've got an article on coronavirus in the US.
It's funny how you paused on the trumpet.
Shameless plug there for our coronavirus article.
Trumpet in the comments saying, it's not that big a deal. Calm down. People die all the time. Funny, that's not what you said about Benghazi. We kind of need a hero.
Yeah, that's a very good point, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. When it comes to Clinton's scandals and all that, these liberals are just completely out of it, just silent.
I did not have sex with that woman.
Not to mention the kind of Eurocentrism, but Americanized Eurocentrism of this thing. Like just from the outset of it, from the onset. I mean, like she's saying, that's killed 200,000 people. I mean, like, yeah, people in America. Like when you say people,
yeah, it's killed 1 million people. Yeah,
it's like
well,
like already.
I liked how she brought up 9/11 as well. Like people were cancelling each other and making 9/11 references on Twitter this year. They're still going on about how dare you.
Remember, I got fucking shared on hot tanky tapes for one of my 9/11 jokes this year.
Oh, I remember that.
Oh no. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I had to change my name and stuff again. They were like, you can support this guy. He's had 6 accounts. Like, he keeps evading the ban. I was like, oh, fuck off.
Jesus Christ. Go, we're carrying on. One on pause. Go.
To lead us out of the dance. And unfortunately, Uncle Joe is not really the man for the job. I was a Bernie supporter.
Sleepy Joe.
And I regret not being more vocal about it when I had the chance. So this time, I'm going to say something. Because even though Biden is not my boy, I still think that dethroning Trump by electing Biden is the single most important thing any American can do right now. Allow me to make my case.
This is the thing.
Go on.
Yeah, this is the thing. They are still stuck on like this lesser of two evil mindset, even though like conditions have massively changed. Like it's not the lesser of two evils anymore. It's two evils, but like a couple of different flavors, and that's it.
Yeah, and like, I mean, I do kind of understand American people wanting to vote for Joe Biden. I wouldn't shame them for that. But I think the greater good for the world would be a Trump victory so that the empire collapses faster. I think we all generally agree on that one.
I think
it would be horrible to live in the empire at the point of collapse. So I do understand why some Americans would want to prolong it a little bit by voting for Biden. I can understand the theory behind it, but personally, it's not where I'd stand. and more acceleration when it comes to America's demise.
Well,
Also-
Americans are Maoist nowadays, so why would surely they'd love a bit of accelerationism.
Also, another thing, like
Yeah, of course.
the people behind Biden are the same ones who are like behind the Clinton State Department, and they were the whole people who were orchestrating the Middle East Arab Spring, color revolutions in Eastern Europe. Those are the people with like the soft power approach to regime change, and they're the ones who like massively contributed to like the fall of the Soviet Union, rise of fascism in Eastern Europe. Yeah, exactly.
Euro Maiden.
It was
And like as
it was-
opposed
that's the big one.
as
Nowadays.
opposed to like big muscle outright militarism from like the Trump or Reagan, for example, and like outright militarism, like their press world is going to see that, oh, that's like a direct attack on us, and they're going to be more defensive, as opposed to like these soft power NGOs with funding from the NED, CIA to outright destabilize the country. So, like, as a person who grew up in the Middle East, I'd say I hope Trump wins because I don't want that Clinton State Department in again.
Yeah,
Well,
like for me, the soft one from
US foreign policy seems to be in a fucking mess. Regardless of who's in power, it was a mess before Trump came in, and it's continued to be on a mess because there's no like central planning. You've got all these people working to this like shared goal that nobody's actually really sat there and said, right, well, this is why the US needs to be have primacy in a way. It's almost just like it's become just, oh, well, it's always been that way. We've always been this like imperialist regime change thing. So now they've just sort of like, I don't know, they don't know what they're doing, do they, anymore? They just fuck it up.
I think the
fuck
thing
it up,
is like
fuck it up.
the mask came off with Trump, didn't it? And like for a lot of people, it opened their eyes to the fact that America isn't a liberal democracy like it claims to be.
I've got a
Imperialist.
good book here. It's called The Hell of Good Intentions. Hold on, let me read the full name. It's called The Hell of Good Intentions, America's Foreign Policy Elite and the Decline of US Primacy by Stephen Walt. He basically, the naivety and idealism that has guided US foreign policy, that's what it's about. He just makes point that like everybody who works in the US foreign policy section doesn't talk to each other, sort of thing. They just bumble through and make these bad decision after bad decision, or back this regime change, half back it, don't really know what the destruction they're causing. I'm not letting them off in any way, but it's a really good book on why all this is happening at the minute.
Like what's really like noticeable though is like, with any kind of capitalist state, you say that what's the goal they're aiming towards, but capitalism doesn't really have a goal other than accrue profit, does it? Like that is the goal. The goal is use labor, accrue profit, and in a capitalist state.
Well, you had imperialists like Cecil Rhodes who understood that like they had to spend some of their imperial looting on improving the life of British people, because if they didn't, we'd turn up at their manor gates, and purge them. So you've had like imperialists like Cecil Rhodes who it's written into their sort of ideology to look after the British public. That's why the British public have got things like the NHS even and stuff, and it's all been paid for by the loot that they've took from other places.
But
I think the American empire doesn't have that.
It doesn't have
imperialists just do what they want.
Yeah, and like you see the people on like Reddit and stuff joking about like the anarcho-capitalist society, and they call it Afghanistan and stuff. But that's what America actually is. Like America is basically it's basically an anarcho-capitalist system, because like other than the fucking military government, which basically chooses which country to bomb in order to further the military economy, the industrial complex and stuff. Like that's why their geopolitics is so mad. It doesn't make any sense. Like it's just
Well, it's libertarian, isn't it? It's a libertarian country operated by the weapons companies. Anyway, let's carry on with this. We're only a minute in.
K-score. By now, leftist Twitter has already seen the title of this video, and I'm sure they're firing off hot takes as we speak. Typical T-thought normie Radlib endorses the electoral farce. Is this your leftist queen of YouTube?
You've seen that profile
Looks more
many
like a
times.
rich Karen who'd rather complain about cancel culture than revolt against the neoliberal status quo. Tabby-chan. You know what, Tabitha? For once, I'm actually gonna take the bait. So this will be a conversation with the communist Twitter cat girl that lives in my brain. Nya. I'm making this video because my timeline is full of leftist 22-year-olds who are so disillusioned with the system that they intend not to vote in this election. And yeah, some of them are probably Russian bots, but that's fine. Maybe I can win over the Russian bot vote. So I really...
Please stop being obsessed with Russia interfering in your election, Americans.
It doesn't exist.
They don't give a shit about who the
funny
American
anymore.
president is.
I bet
do
Putin's
understand
laughing his
the
ass off.
perspective that Biden is not worth voting for, because that was also my first reflex when he was nominated. But on reflection, I think to throw away this vote would be a terrible mistake. Don't make me eat my bathroom tile, children. There's
Yeah, it would be a terrible mistake, vote Trump.
probably asbestos in that tile, because America's so
See, I've watched this video already, and I'm just wondering. We'll come back to it at the end.
great, even the of poison. Okay, Tabby-chan, give me your worst. I want free healthcare, student debt canceled, and worker ownership of the means of production. Biden won't give us any of that, and I don't want to vote for someone who won't actually change things. Well, listen, Tabby-chan, none of us want to vote for Joe Biden. I don't want to vote for Joe Biden any more than I want to retile my bathroom. But sometimes...
Electoral democracy going well when you literally have to vote for a choice you don't want to vote for. And
Yeah.
Says it all, doesn't it?
a situation so toxic and so dangerous, well, you have no choice but to get your hands dirty. And in this election, I consider a vote for Biden primarily a vote against Trump. You know, voting for a politician is not necessarily the same as supporting the politician. I don't think anyone should stan Joe Biden. I'm not asking you to like, comment, and subscribe to Joe Biden's OnlyFans. Fascinating, I'm sure it is.
The president has a...
He only like accepts like under 18 girls. I bet. Fucking weird bastard.
Voting is more of a utilitarian calculation based on the likely consequences of each candidate winning. It's not hero worship, it's not choosing a person to have a beer with, it's strategy. Bad strategy. Biden is no better than Trump. The Dems are just Republicans with a ceremonial facade of meaningless liberal civility. Well, I agree that the Democrats are sucky libs, but it's simply not true that there's no difference between them and the Republicans. I remember leftists
This is where she starts to sound like Lenin.
saying in 2016 that there was no real difference between Trump and Hillary. But there's a lot of things that Trump did that Hillary would not have done. Things like filling the Supreme Court with anti-abortion fanatics,
Hold on. Before she goes through this thing, the Democrats are the party that started the Ku Klux Klan.
withdrawing from the agreement, appointing climate change deniers to head climate research, attempting to remove medical non-discrimination protections for trans people, constantly maligning the integrity of elections with no evidence.
Fuck off. Like, every single government would do CIA coups. Like, if I don't know if that's what the fucking she's trying to get at with the maligning the integrity of elections, whether she's talking about domestic elections. But like, you know, this electoral bullshit is nothing new.
I mean, I think that's probably more to do with Trump saying that he's not going to leave office in the USA even if he loses.
That's funny.
probably-
That is quite
yeah.
funny.
I mean, it's not just Trump saying that he won't concede defeat. Like, the Biden camp have also said that they won't concede defeat. And you even have think tanks saying, hinting, like, at the use of the military when it comes to it.
She picks up
that'd
on
be
that
great.
later on.
Alright, go on.
The enemy, calling white nationalist militias very fine people and telling them to stand by.
I mean, he should stop doing that instantly, shouldn't he? The fucking idiot.
Aspiring to be an autocratic dictator and disdaining democracy itself. Trivializing a deadly pandemic in the name of delusional macho posturing. So sure, the Democrats suck and they're libs, but it does make a real difference if they're in control instead of the Republicans, especially if you're, a woman or LGBTQ or a human who lives on the planet Earth. So Biden will give us rainbow capitalism.
I live on planet Earth, and I'm fucked both ways, especially if you're in the Middle East or in the global South.
Same.
So yeah.
Same.
Yeah.
For Black Lives Matter, but he'll do nothing to bring about systemic change. Well, Tabby-chan, I'm sorry to say I agree with you about that. I fully expect to vote for Biden and then protest the administration that I voted for. So you sit here vote shaming me, and in the next...
This is where she starts to just destroy the American Twitter left.
Admitting it won't do anything? You're a counter-revolutionary lib with no plan except just vote. Tabby-chan. Look, I promise I'm not as dumb as I apparently look, comrade. Why is it that when you tell people on the left to vote, they think you're
She used gendered language. Don't say comrade.
saying quit your job, abandon your family, retreat from society, and fall into a deep slumber from...
Was that the DSA convention with that guy?
Yeah, it was the DSA convention where it just became a circus about don't use this and that word.
Don't clap. One guy was like, "Can you shorten your answers because I'm struggling to stay attention." Brilliant.
4 years to vote for a shitty lib before fleeing into the forest and slumber on a stone slab in an eldritch temple awaiting the return of Beelzebub. Voting doesn't take that long. At most, it takes 1 day. You can vote and do other things also. I guess you're probably still mad about that white woman with the we'd be at brunch sign. And I feel you, though, to be honest, I would eat a Louis XVI style armchair with a pair of chopsticks if it meant I got to go to brunch right now. Could you be any bougier? Don't call me bougie.
Fucking hate people saying bougie.
I'm beyond bougie. When my carriage passes by the bourgeoisie, I scoff at them openly. I've had enough of this rad lib merchant class.
When that word first came into usage, that bougie word, I think it was from some rap song that went popular or something, and all of my colleagues at the time were saying, "Oh, you're so bougie," and I said to them, I was like, "Oh, is that a shortening of bourgeoisie?" And they looked at me like I was some kind of time traveler from the 1600s or something. They looked at me like I was such a
French time traveler.
Yeah, I was like, what? I was like, is that what you say? And they were like, nah, it just means rich. I was like, yes, so basically what I'm saying then. Fucking idiot. Sorry, go on.
Trying to abolish my fiefdom. You're a famous YouTuber whose class interests do not align with mine. Why should I listen to what you say?
YouTubers are petit bourgeois because they're self-employed. In fact, they're not. They if she's making money just through YouTube, then she's a proletarian because YouTube are in control of her profit flow. They take her ad money and they skim off the top of it. So
except she gets 20k a month from doing videos every 2 months.
Yeah,
so,
well, sure, but wage, the actual amount that you make doesn't make a difference.
Yeah, but I'm saying she's more like Labour aristocracy at this point.
Well, she'd be petty bourgeois because I'm sure she owns her own business. But even petty bourgeois people are technically working class. If the capitalists decide to turn off YouTube, she's fucked. She doesn't have her own video streaming.
Yeah,
stuff.
It's a classical thing, like Marx points out. Along as capitalist crisis happens, the smaller capitalists and the petty bourgeois are proletarianized.
Exactly. They get fucked.
You should. I don't know why anyone listens to me, honestly. But also, I am a degenerate class traitor, and in my opinion, influence first against the world.
But she is a class traitor. Well, she is a class traitor because she would be petty bourgeois and she would be rejoining the proletarian class. And also, influences up against the wall.
That is one statement I vehemently will agree with. The vast majority of influencers don't even deserve re-education. Imagine the likes of Jake Paul and his brother and all the other fucking idiots in that kind of category. All of them just fucking shoot them. Sorry, go on.
Wish you
We'll have to edit that part out.
You at least have to admire that about us, libs. We have a remarkable willingness to have polite conversations with people who are trying to kill us. Speaking of which, we've been talking a lot about my plan, but what is your plan, Tabitha? Protest, unionize, mutual aid, strike.
All those things are like Trotskyist answers to like capitalism, like protest.
I
protest.
mean,
unionize isn't, but like they're and strikes. This general strike idea is just like a Trotskyist.
I mean, yeah, like the strikes alone, without like a kind of militant, along with politicized movement. Yeah,
exactly.
that would
you need
be
the movement.
exactly.
So first, it should say build a fucking vanguard party, and then the rest of them.
Exactly.
But that's the difference, isn't it? And that's like why our criticisms of this video are quite like valid. But like the American leftist who criticizes it, like that's what they're coming at it from a Trotskyist angle. Like,
but they're just raging because she's dared to take them on. But like, you'll start.
The correct answer is like, you can vote if you want to. It's completely optional. Whether you choose to is up to you. It doesn't really matter because it's bourgeois electoralism. So ideally, it's your choice. But the most important thing is you join a party, you organise, and you start speaking to fucking the workers, and you start to build class solidarity. That's the way we win. Like the strikes and stuff, that's end goal. That's like that will happen anyway as capitalism begins to fall into deeper decline, especially with coronavirus and stuff. If we're organised, we can take control of the strikes. Like
doing one strike for a day is not going to do anything, is it?
The thing is,
Mao
like,
said,
they talk about. Sorry.
I was just saying, Mao said, like, the peasant movement that was picking up that he kind of took control of, he said that the Communist Party could either take control of this movement and make it their own and use it as a revolutionary force, or they could get out of its way. Now, that'll be what happens when it comes to stuff like strikes and stuff like that. Like, they are inevitable and they will come. And at that point, if there's an organised vanguard, then yes, you can take control of that and use it as a revolutionary strategy. But if you're just a kind of group of fucking 16-year-olds with guns, all arguing about pronouns and stuff, like, you know what I mean? You're not anywhere near the kind of organizational level required to take control of the masses in that capacity.
The thing is, like, they talk about how voting, like as if Biden is the savior or whatever, and that's why they should vote because there are forces and all that. For example, at UCPUSA, like, if we were to look at the difference between the case today and the case of voting for Roosevelt in the 1940s and 30s, you would actually see that socialists did and communists did align with Roosevelt because Roosevelt was allying himself with the militant working class and the socialist and communist organizations to further, like, to win, to give certain concessions.
Mm-hmm.
And like back then, obviously, you still had the Soviet Union, massive communist socialist movement. So a section of the bourgeoisie was forced to kind of subordinate in their way to the workers and give concessions, as opposed to another section of the bourgeoisie which was outright fascist, aligned with the Nazis as well. That is a difference. Like that is where voting makes a difference. In this case, you have a militant working class conscious working class, militant unions, along with very influential communist parties, and like that is the context where voting would make a difference, as opposed to today.
I mean, like in that situation as well, like you've got, if the USA had aligned with fascism, with Nazi Germany, there's a very good chance that we would be, in a world-ending situation potentially. In 1945, like we might have been in a fascist world, rather than the one that we're in now, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know whether America would have made that much of a difference on the fascist side.
Caleb
like,
Maupin explains this. Sorry, go on.
Sorry, just finishing off yet. The Lend-Lease program, which I know we malign the US and say it was the Soviets that won the war, and although that is mostly true, the US Lend-Lease program was essential. We got that because of Roosevelt. That went to the Soviets as well. That went cross ideology borders. It went from liberals to socialists because that was more important than defeating the Nazis. So yeah, under that situation, voting is completely valid for Roosevelt, but that's not where we're at now. I think our other comrade who's watching with us but who isn't speaking just made a very good point here in the chat where he said it's similar to saying what's better, ISIS or Al Qaeda.
Yeah,
it's a very good point.
Yeah, so Caleb Maupin also explains this brilliantly, the contrast between the 1930s and today, where today you have no clear communist vanguard or socialist vanguard. You don't have a militant working class, and both parties literally it's no longer the lesser of two evils, it's just two flavors of evil.
Yeah, let's carry on.
And yeah, carry on.
So I totally agree. Those are all good things to do. I've gone to protests myself this year. I've given to a mutual aid group. You're right that voting won't fix all our problems, and it's good to get involved in local things like that. But it still matters who's on the Supreme Court, right? And who's leading the national response.
There's a good point there that she made, that she said she didn't unionize, which is something that self-employed people don't have access to. They don't have access to unions. So when you're talking about her class interests before, she has in somewhat a more precarious job, employment, economic position than somebody who's a full proletarian in employment. So to say that somebody's class interests are different to you just because they're self-employed isn't always 100% right.
So, in addition to whatever else you're doing, vote. Why participate in the charade of a election? America is not democratic. It's a rigged, two-party corporate Well, I mean...
That's true.
Yeah, there is a lot wrong with our elections. Big money financing campaigns, the Electoral College, gerrymandering, voter suppression, DC being disenfranchised.
The fact that America exists.
All of this should obviously be changed, but I don't think that in this moment, leftists boycotting the election is an effective form of protest. Okay, but voting is for liberal normies who use Facebook and Reddit. Ew. Okay, yeah, it's true that voting is not cool. It's boring, it's incrementalist, it doesn't make you feel like you're owning the libs or being edgier than your parents. But, you could always vote in secret and then maintain your radical image around your friends.
let me
They're all gonna fucking do that as well. It's so funny.
Let me just mention something I brought up. The thing is, in America, these lefties and stuff, they're either two things. One thing is vote for Biden. Either the other thing, don't vote at all, and don't participate in bourgeois electoralism. Where and it's just so polarized that people forget to look in between the cracks and see stuff that can be done. Like Lenin said to utilize, even Mao said that in the industrialized countries, the parliament and other means of electoralism must be utilized and used to expose its fallacy and expose its shortcomings. For example, if you're a communist,
foreshadowing,
and for example, Christopher Halali with the Party of Communists USA, Peace USA, he's running for Congress, and on a communist platform like that, I would support, to be honest. And if you're, for example, a communist running for city mayor, anything like that, that is something to support because it will platform communists and more radical militant ideas. And
exactly. Not just Alexandra Ocasio sort of liberalism.
Exactly. And this idea that you shouldn't participate at all in electoralism, they
basically want someone more left than AOC so they can call AOC out on TV. You know, Bernie Sanders is not that. He's just an old nice guy / xenophobe. Anyway, let's carry on.
Being politics inherently not cool, because politics is for people who care, people who believe in things, people who place their hope in fallible human beings, all of which is very not cool. I feel like so much of internet politics, whether radical or centrist, is just posturing. It's showcasing that you're funnier and smarter than the normies, that you see through all the
At Maoists.
bullshit, the corrupt system, the electoral farce. But all you're doing about it is sitting here shitposting and demeaning the people
At Maoists.
who are actually trying to accomplish what little can be accomplished.
At Maoists.
And in effect, edgy leftists who complain about both sides and do nothing are no different from edgy centrists who complain about both sides and do nothing.
At
Maoists.
Okay, but you yourself said Trump is an aspiring autocrat who doesn't believe in democracy. Why bother voting against someone who won't leave office even if he loses? This ends in violence either way, so we may as well smash.
Well, you're right, I don't expect Trump to go quietly. But if there's a decisive Biden victory and it's not some kind of vote recount nightmare scenario, then I think the military will force Trump to leave. Don't get me wrong, Tabby Chan. Times are tough. The president is a fascist. I think this country...
It's crazy, isn't it, that they're actually liberals here are wanting a military coup. They're calling for a military coup.
But I think she's right. I think she's right. You should vote Biden. So to force Trump into doing this, because this is what's going to.
I think Trump's all bluster. I don't think he'll do it. I think
we'll see. The thing is, wait. The thing is, before we continue, liberals and these other lefties need to understand what fascism is. I don't think Trump is a fascist. He certainly has fascistic inclinations sometimes and ideas, like telling white supremacists to stand by. But by objective definition, he's not a fascist. Fascism is when capitalism is in a crisis and one section of the bourgeoisie cracks down on another section of the bourgeoisie, along with the working class, to maintain stability and maintain the status quo. And that obviously includes force and stuff. Trump hasn't done that. Trump is a dimwit. He doesn't know what to do. He doesn't really bring the hammer down most of the time, does he?
No, he
on the other hand,
he said multiple times, the military guys love me. It's the top brass that hate me because I won't let them do their little wars. And he's right. He's been less of an imperialist than Obama was.
And then he's calling US troops losers as well. Remember, he's the president who called US troops losers, which is 100% true. US troops are all losers. Let's carry on.
Trump's very basic for
A
that.
violent uprising than it's ever been in my life. But if it comes to smashing, you're going to want allies. And for a lot of people, Trump rejecting a decisive Biden victory, therefore rejecting democracy itself, that would legitimize smashing. So you should still want every Biden vote you can get.
But capitalism
She's right.
is the root of the problems with our world.
Hang on a minute. Are these actual tweets, or is she just
She's just pretending. She's just pretending. Well, they are actual tweets since this video got released, because if you search her name, you will see all this.
This person typed out these actual tweets at Contrapoints or something.
No, it's her character, isn't it, for the video, I think.
Oh yeah, true.
Voting won't change that. We don't need a Democrat. We need to end capitalism.
Tabitha, capitalism is an epical world economic order. When you say end capitalism, you're talking about a tectonic shift in global politics that is so much bigger than all of us that I don't really understand what course of action you're recommending. Before capitalism, there was feudalism, and feudalism ended over hundreds of years of complex shifts in population and production.
Feudalism still exists.
Not because people just decided it was time to end feudalism. So won't capitalism end?
Also, America never was feudal.
Just whenever a new economic system overtakes
Mao ended feudal.
Not the USA anyway. I'm not too educated in sort of native history. Maybe they had feudal systems, but
I just wanted to add that Mao ended the feudal system in Tibet as well, which is very cool. We should all appreciate that.
I thing that can be accomplished by a small group of activists. And I say small group because, I'm sorry to break it to you, but the vast majority of Americans are not communists. I think a lot of internet leftists have a vastly overinflated sense of how big and important they are. I fell prey to it myself. Like, I was so sure that Bernie was going to win the primary. In part because when I looked at my timeline, I was seeing this unanimous ocean of support for Bernie and contempt for the mainstream Dems. But what I was seeing, and what we're all seeing on our feeds, is a finely curated and very unrepresentative sample of the population. You have to remember that only 22% of Americans use Twitter at all.
And Twitter will show you tweets that you actually interact with over your other followers as well. So it's like you fall even more into an echo chamber.
The first time I realised that this echo chamber thing kind of existed was like when I was supporting Corbyn on his like final failed electoral mission, and all I saw on all of my social media platforms was just like Corbyn to win. Let's get the Tories out trending worldwide and all this. You know, we're gonna do it. We're genuinely gonna do it. And then it collapsed in the biggest failure ever, and I was just like, wow, okay. Maybe this echo chamber thing, maybe there's some weight to it.
Definitely.
Most tweet, and 80% of tweets come from 10% of users. So 80% of tweets come from 2% of Americans, and it's not a representative 2%. According to Pew Research, Twitter users differ from the general population, and that they're on average.
Don't we fucking know that?
Younger, more likely to identify as Democrats, more educated, and a higher income. And far left hammer and sickle Twitter is an even smaller, even more unrepresentative sample within a sample.
What about Mango Twitter?
Talking about less than 0.1% of Americans. And that less than 0.1% does have an outsized influence because they're prolific tweeters, and their tweets get seen by public figures who use the platform, which is why there's so much discourse about cancel culture, even though cancel culture is produced by a relatively tiny group of people. So if you want to understand why even Democratic politicians cater to this retrograde soft conservatism, you have to pull your head out of the radical bubble. Back in 2012, I volunteered to work on the Obama campaign, and I enraged people's dogs by knocking on their doors and ruined their dinners with canvassing phone calls. And I really recommend that leftists try doing this for at least one election, even though it is the worst thing in the world and I hated it so much. You know, you do have to listen to a lot of, I don't want Barack Hussein Obama redistributing my wealth. Okay, Ronald, I'm pretty sure Obama's not sending his death panels after your landscaping business, but whatever. Talking to voters teaches you the hard realities of what your fellow Americans actually care about. And when I was canvassing...
This is a very good point, isn't it, about terminally online people who
She's smashing it.
To be online, organised and stuff, but, you know, these people aren't speaking to the general public. Like, I think most of us here in this chat are either kind of, you know, have a front-facing job or have had one in the past. But like, even just having a customer-facing job kind of teaches you what the general public kind of thinks, and it's vastly, radically different to what your friends and your colleagues and the people you choose to surround yourself with think. You know, in your curated little online space.
Yeah, you're exactly right. She's smashing it. She knew that she was going to get these comments as well.
Yeah, it is quite like funny.
People, you know, I talked to union families, but I don't think I talked to a single communist. You know, most people do not read theory.
Also, like, you know, I've been in the UK Labour Party myself as well. He taught me quite a lot about how that party works, you know. She's right.
People are concerned primarily with themselves and their families. They want personal security and prosperity. And if you look at the talking points used by politicians, they reflect that. That's why the
exactly. This is what the vast
the
majority
Conservatives won in the Labour heartlands.
Exactly. Like, this is the point that a lot of, especially online lefties, don't know. There are two currents in like whatever socialist movement there is ever. one current is like the intellectuals who like are angry at the world, who want to see injustice destroyed, like injustice destroyed, and just want to change the world and stuff. And there's another group, and then they are long-time communists as well. And then the other current, on the other hand, is working people who just want stability in their lives and a way out of this crisis. And these are the people that she's referring to. They become communists because they want a way out of instability, and they want a way to feed their families, essentially. And this is like what a lot of people miss. There, go on.
Right, Antifa so much because it works. Most people are afraid for their personal property and safety. This idea of Antifa looters and riots, it scares the shit out of people.
Yes, like these people say, okay. Now, with respect to people who go to counter demonstrations against the far right and that, but sometimes you have these people saying, yeah, we want to burn this place down, we want to burn this and that. Like, there are mom and pop shops that are just making a living. There are people just looking at you, people who want, as I said, to feed their families, just normal working people. When they see that, they can be so turned off from radical ideas, from communist ideas, like, oh man, it's a mess, honestly.
Yeah, basically pushing somebody into like individualism, basically.
Exactly.
You're not turning them off a communist. You're not turning them off communist ideals. You're turning them off collective ideals because they're seeing a collective riot. Not
you see the riots as well. Like the media really does this really well. They show the riots and they say, you know, it's Antifa or it's communist or whatever they kind of slander it with. But like I watched like myself, like my parents are relatively liberal, and usually quite left leaning liberals. I think those people read and stuff generally. But the second the riots were being showed, they were all pro American police. And when the riots were happening in Britain, like the small scale ones where the statues were getting torn down, like I had arguments with my mum about how like the statues shouldn't, like she was arguing the statues shouldn't be torn down, and I was like, you know, come on, it's a statue to a slave owner, like it doesn't matter, you know, it's better in the fucking thing, but like
it doesn't matter. But at the same time, though, it's it's just a statue. Like, you know, I would rather teach some working class people about communism than have to.
The point being, like,
go on.
My parents are, as I say, quite left leaning liberals generally. But when faced with like the media saying, right, look what these evil anarchists are doing, like I've noticed they're calling them anarchists quite a lot. Especially Trump and Biden, like they're not really calling them leftists or anything, they're calling them anarchists specifically. In a lot of their little press conferences, Trump sometimes calls them communists as well, because obviously he's far right, so you know, he always calls anyone communist, even liberals. But like the point being, like, you know, this kind of seeing this destruction, the media playing it up and making it look scary, turns the liberals into fascist supporters, because when the crackdown comes and when the shooting of all of these anarchists inevitably does happen, because it will happen when the fucking US Army rolls in infantry fighting vehicles to mow them down, like they're all just going to be fucking all the centrist Americans are going to be like, well, they're evil Antifa losers, you know, it's fine. No, not it
exactly.
Needed to be done. They wanted to see the overthrow of America. Like they zoom in on the footage of them burning American flags and stuff, which we think, that's pretty fucking cool. But like to the average American who isn't well read on political theory and who is just looking for a way out, if they look at that scene and see the radical looters burning flags, and then they see the fascists saying we're here to defend your homeland.
Exactly.
Like,
you're not
why they get turned to fascism a lot easier than they do to the left.
Exactly. It's more like venting, well, not venting anger, but in the grand scheme of things, you're not gonna attract the masses of people, especially the masses of people who are, because of the crisis that they are facing, open to new ideas, potentially more radical ideas and left-leaning ideas. You're sending them away.
Yeah.
And like, instead of like with the whole complicated batshit crazy movement of the New Left movement in America of the 1970s, 80s, and well, not really 90s, but yeah, you get the point. Like,
it just falls away, doesn't it, after the Soviet Union?
Exactly. Like,
yeah,
there's no movement right now, and you have several groups sticking to, like, from what Caleb explains it, like they're trying to hold a monopoly on the protests and stuff, like keeping a hold of the movement when there's barely any movement in existence. Like, and instead of like getting to the masses,
their own orgs. They're all starting their own as well, aren't they? In that true American sort of fashion, instead of just joining like a mass movement, they're all like starting their own little mutual aid sort of groups, which is good.
It always makes me think of
party. That's just mutual aid.
Yeah.
But anyway, let's carry on.
It makes me think of the Life of Brian scene.
Scary. Like,
go on, which scene in Life of Brian?
The splitters. Splitters.
Oh yeah,
Every time gangs do anything.
It scares the shit out of people. Of course, in reality, Antifa is not scary. Like, I've met Antifa, and Antifa, Antifa is Ryan. It's Ryan and his...
Antifa is Ryan.
Transgender, furry anarchist friends. But look, if what you want is socialism, or even just social democracy, then you have a lot of work ahead of you in terms of outreach. You have to engage people, educate,
Exactly, they're not reaching out to the masses.
Raise awareness, but you don't want to do that because it requires that you stop owning the libs and start actually communicating with them. You have to build alliances with like Facebook moms who ask ignorant questions like, what's Indigenous Peoples Day? And who think that Kamala Harris making sassy faces is the height of praxis, and who probably watch Contrapoints. How embarrassing,
And the people who actually fangirl over Kamala Harris wearing Timberlands.
You can't let your radical queer friends catch you associating with mainstream normie libs. How very bourgeois.
But revolution to end capitalism.
Okay, so you're saying that your plan is to do a communist revolution and overthrow the US?
Do a communist revolution. Right, hold on. I'm just going to try and find a Mao quote. Got the red book out here next to me. Yeah. Where we at? No, it's not that one. Every communist must be brought to understand that the supreme test of the words and deeds of a communist is to whether they conform with the highest interests and enjoy the support of the overwhelming majority of the people. Chairman Mao.
Boom.
That's very valid. That's super hecking valid. That's extremely valid. I mean, I guess I admire the ambition. Just a couple quick follow-up questions, though. Are you counting on the U.S. military and police taking the side of the communists, or is your plan to overpower them? Because unless you know something about the military that I don't think that much of the military is going to defect to join a communist revolution.
Like two of them.
So there will have to be a war. Revolution doesn't happen overnight. After the Russian Revolution, there is the Civil War from 1917 to 1923. So you are going to need to raise a Red Army. I mean, you can't have a communist revolution without a Red Army, right? So
this is not to mention the vast amounts of right-wing militias, obviously, that even now are openly
she's going to get to that.
Okay,
She's literally going to get to that. But while you've got it paused, she didn't mention like the 50 years of building support, mass support that like the socialist movement in Russia did before 1917. This isn't something that just sort of like spontaneously happened in a year. This went on for like a generation.
The vital point is as well is that like the Winter War and the Civil War in Russia after the revolution, kind of that wasn't like if you were to compare that to a modern war, like they had rifles and maybe some artillery pieces and horses at the height of their weaponry, but you're going to be fighting the U.S. military's drone force, their stealth fighter jets, their drone tanks. Like the U.S. military is
It's not
built
looking
to
good, is it?
destroy. You know what I mean? It's
This is why
not
they let
to do
Americans
with-
just have guns as well, though. Do you know what I mean? If they were any threat, they wouldn't be allowed to have AR-15s.
Yeah, because what are you going to do with your fucking AR-15 and a double-barrel shotgun against a fucking drone that's like 36,000 feet in the sky, dropping Hellfire missiles on you from some fucking bunker down
the,
like
the
2
kid's
states
operating
away?
it. He's operating on an Xbox pad on a ship that you can't even get to. Do you know what I mean?
How far in are we?
We're nearly finished.
Okay.
She's got quite a long outro. Yeah, come on, let's carry on.
How many weapons have you amassed? How many units have you trained? Why are we talking about this? Why am I even entertaining this notion? When the far right talks about violence and overthrowing the government, they actually mean it. And they mean it because they have literal militias, the 3%ers, the Boogaloo Boys. They're stockpiling weapons and training to use them. They have ex-military men in their ranks and connections to white supremacists
This is
within
fucking
the police
scary.
and military. Whereas, when leftists talk about revolution on Twitter, it strikes me as ideation, not intent. Psychiatrists have this distinction between two kinds of suicidal thinking. So there's intent, which is when you have a plan for how you're going to do it, and then they have to commit you because you're a danger to yourself. And then there's ideation, which is, you're not actually going to do it, but you just have that inner monologue that's constantly saying, I just want to die. There's no more joy for me left in this world. I just can't stand it anymore. I just want to end it all. And then my psychiatrist says, well, we could try putting you back on Lexapro. And I say, not again, doctor. Not again. So right-wing extremist discourse is violent intent, whereas left-wing radical discourse often amounts to revolutionary ideation.
Yes.
LARPing.
This is why they've all got like a ist. You're not just a Marxist, Leninist. You're like a
Hosius, Gonzaloist.
Yeah, exactly. You've got to pick the most obscure one that's like your favourite bands that nobody else listens to, sort of thing.
It's fantasy escapism, an alternative to politics.
Well, you can't plan a revolution.
Yes, you fucking can. And anybody who has studied the history of the Communist Party, the Soviet Union, fucking knows that. How you just read fucking what is to be done. That is the plan for a revolution. What the fuck?
Revolution, spontaneous reaction to intolerable injustice.
No, it's not. That's the most Trotskyist.
Some anarchist shit. This is anarchist shit. It's got to be, surely, because it doesn't.
But they do talk like
no
this.
basis in
This is
theory
what they
here.
expect, though. This is just Trotskyism.
Yeah. So a riot is the language of the unheard. But what kind of language is it? What is the point of speaking through a riot or a protest or a strike? Is it just emotional expression, like an angry diary entry? Or is the point not just to speak, but to be heard? Heard by whomst? Who are you trying to persuade? The glob glob gob galab? No, you want to be heard by the people with the power to change things. So it matters whether the people with power are likely to listen. This year, the US has seen one of the biggest protest movements in history. And what has that accomplished? Well, at the moment, we have a president promising to double down on law and order.
At least you have more sitcoms on Netflix with a higher percentage of Afro-American casts.
But it's funny. It's funny how Trump's literally just done nothing and let him.
Not just
continue
Trump,
to
like
spread it.
even Biden and Harris, like they're not pledging to do anything for Black Lives Matter or to like alleviate any of the grievances that people are facing.
Yeah, it's just
Bro,
do
literally
nothing.
the only
Just leave
like
them
policy
protesting.
I know, like the only Biden policy I actually even know is that he's not gonna ban fracking. Like that's how I don't know anything about him other than that he's not going to ban fracking. That's it.
Police
pretty much.
A president who told a room full of cops not to be too gentle with the people they arrest.
And when you see these thugs being thrown into the back of a paddy wagon, you just see them thrown in, rough. I said, please don't be too nice.
And let's be clear, both Biden and
Okay, now.
Kamala have an ugly record when it comes to crime and policing. For most of his career, Biden has called for more policing, which is the opposite of what we need right now. I'm right there with you, Tabby-chan, but the 2020 protests have shifted the discourse about policing and criminal justice, and Biden has responded by beginning to shift his position. This year's Democratic platform includes things like stricter use of force standards, banning chokeholds, restricting qualified immunity, creating a registry of police misconduct, limiting no-knock warrants, decriminalizing weed, investing in crime prevention and social work.
The thing is, we have a lot of those in Britain, like having an established like National Registry of Officers, that kind of thing, but they don't do shit. If you actually watch the YouTube channel Crime Bodge, you'll notice how corrupt the police is and how they constantly try, even with these institutions that
Look at
supposedly...
Hillsborough.
Yeah, exactly. Even with the institutions that supposedly regulate the behaviour of police, they eventually corrupt that and just... like, it doesn't really matter anymore. Banning chokeholds, mate, you still have the police unloading AR-15 magazines onto homeless people. I've seen that. I've seen that on the.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I've seen
As
that.
long as they don't choke. You putting your knee on the neck on someone's neck isn't the chokehold either, is it? It's just like you use your knee.
My favorite bit is like that this is like the radical, kind of angle. Like, all right, we're not gonna choke you out anymore. Like that's the most radical thing they can do in the face of like all these.
But she did say she's going to
Men to the
complain
ground.
about him still. But yeah, you're right. Let's carry on.
Go on.
No, it's not good enough, but it's a start. It's progress.
Fair enough.
It shows that the Democrats are at least willing to listen to protests. When John F. Kennedy first took office in 1961, he didn't want to propose a civil rights bill because that would have been super unpopular with the Southern Democrats. But then 1963 happened, and there were protests and uprisings all over the South, and the March on Washington that summer, and Kennedy listened.
The events in Birmingham and elsewhere have so increased the cries for equality that no city or state or legislative body can prudently choose to ignore them.
He was moved by the protests, and he responded by introducing what became the Civil Rights Act of 1964. But what if Kennedy hadn't been president in 1963?
Well, the thing is about that, after Kennedy, it was Nixon who actually pushed through the Civil Rights Act. Fun fact.
Nixon, what a guy.
Had been president. What if Trump had been president? We might not have gotten a civil rights. So it does matter who's president.
Well, Nixon was worse than Trump. He got fucking, what do you call it, impeached.
Yeah, but like
for
that
having
was
secret meetings with the mafia.
no, but like that was kind of he did kind of a lot of other good stuff though. He stopped the war in Vietnam. He withdrew them.
Wasn't that
he kind of
Kennedy?
No. Kennedy started it, but Nixon was the one who actually did the withdrawal.
Well, to be fair, right before the withdrawal, they did initiate a horrendous, massive bombing campaign right before they pulled out. So it's
I'm not defending the man. I'm just saying, like, he he did the whole ping pong diplomacy shit with China and kind of like opened up with China a bit, but that was only because of the Sino-Soviet split. But like I think the whole Watergate thing, as I pretty much understand it, it was like the CIA just being dirty bastards as per usual. And then like when they got caught doing it, like the president at the time had to take the fall kind of thing. And it just happened to be Nixon, who was also being like quite friendly to the commies as the far right war hawks saw him. So he had to go. It's all nuanced, isn't it? Like everything's fucking nuanced.
I've never thought of it like that. Let's carry on.
It does matter who's president. It actually matters a lot. And please, Tabby-chan, do not let a fascist win to own the libs. God damn it.
All right, fam, let's open a new tab.
I mean, if you're American, then she's 100% right.
I'd say mostly, to be honest, not 100%.
If you're a citizen of the rest of the world, then it don't fucking matter.
To be honest,
Trump seems to be making the USA fall apart quicker. But then at the same time, I think we should just leave Americans to it anyway, don't you? And just stop caring who's there.
I mean, that's the thing, innit? Like, we say we don't want them to be involved in everyone else's issues, so we shouldn't be so involved in theirs. I mean, I know obviously theirs matters to us on a global scale because they are the global hegemon. But if you think about it, like, it doesn't matter because whichever fucking neoliberal fucking global fascist capitalist, whether they're Nazi fascist like Trump or fucking kind of,
Secret
neoliberal corporatist fascist like Biden. It doesn't matter what kind of fascism, what flavor of fascism, we're gonna get the same one. It's like my favorite meme is that one, and it's like a cartoon image of two like Middle Eastern kids pointed up at the sky, and there's like a picture of a drone in the sky, and it says they say the next one will be sent by Biden, and like, that's the case, isn't it? Like, it doesn't fucking matter who's sending the drones.
Exactly. Especially if you're Palestinian.
Although if I was American, I think, like, selfishly, because it would be a selfish perspective, I would probably vote for Biden, because I think it would probably improve people's living standards. Although, and I mean only on a very minor level.
I don't think it will at all, to be honest.
Well, they've got to try something to save them, haven't they?
I think they would try something.
The thing is,
it's the choice between accelerate and die, which is what Trump is. He's like just ban out fascism. Like, he's saying, like, global warming doesn't exist and crazy shit like that. When, like, the US is the biggest polluter in the world, when you factor in the armed forces as well. So, like, the issue is, like, Trump's a fucking idiot and he will just spiral the economy into the end. But I think Biden will be forced to push kind of like massive concessions. Otherwise, there will be a kind of ragtag revolution that he'll have to put down.
That's because, like, if you actually look at the class forces that are behind both camps, the bankers, the owners of the banks, J.P. Morgan, et al., like the big four super major oil companies, those are the like that section of the American bourgeoisie, of the American imperialist bourgeoisie, is the section that usually pushes for like concessions and like liberal reforms, etc., to kind of like stabilize society, because they think long term, unlike the smaller capitalists, such as the casino owners, the Home Depot owners, the fracking companies that actually are behind Trump. Like that section of the ruling class in America is a lot more libertarian, which in the end does make a lot of sense. Like, makes things sound like they make sense. Anyway, continue.
Go to Gov and enter your state. And yeah, I know this is boring, but I'm trying to think about the tantrum Trump is going to throw when an entire nation rejects him, and I'm letting that motivate me. In some states, you can still register, so register now if you still haven't.
I mean, it is going to be fucking glorious if he loses and then refuses to leave. It's going to be fucking... It's going to be that meme where the guy's stuffing popcorn in his mouth and we're just all watching. It's like payback, you know what I mean? This is what the world wants.
To be honest,
go to vote.org and find your polling place and make a plan for how you're going to get there. Make sure your phone's charged, and you might want to bring some snacks or even some friends. If you're like me, you need to set an alarm so you don't forget, and then just try not to get inconsolably high until after you've placed your vote.
Because we've all been living through a year of hell, and I for one think that we all deserve to begin 2021 by collectively purging from our lives this swindling, pestilent doofus. Vote him out.
To be honest, from the point of view of the global south, more specifically the Middle East, I hope Trump wins, because that wing of the ruling class does imperialism in a less effective way. The wing on the other hand, like the Biden wing, as I said before, they use more soft power. They pump billions into NED NGOs and like destabilize countries and shift opinions miraculously. Whereas like Trump and the people behind him are more like outright muscle militarization, which is a lot, I'd say, easier to counter from an anti-imperialist perspective.
Well, look how they fucked up in Venezuela.
Yeah,
And in Hong Kong.
Exactly.
And in Bolivia.
And in Bolivia.
That's another reason, by the way, why the Muslim Brotherhood, for example, don't really like Trump. The Muslim Brotherhood absolutely love Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama. I mean, for God's sake, it took a black president to overthrow Libya, to overthrow Gaddafi. Like another,
what a shame that was.
Yeah, and yeah, pretty much like Clinton just pumped absolutely billions into NGOs.
Let's give a verdict as if we are just looking at America. I think she has assessed the American Twitter left perfectly.
Yes.
She's given them some actual work to do. And if they actually listen to what she's talking about and they just go take a few steps back and do like the campaigning, and they're
exactly
going to come out a lot better communists.
Although I disagree with her final verdict and her outcome, but she did make some very valid points, especially like about American leftists, especially those ones who just stick to online echo chambers.
Mm-hmm. And
I mean,
the
like
military thing should scare them big time.
My take on it is like, you know, her analysis is wrong in that we should hope for, you know, a Trump victory. I also believe that, you know, she's wrong on some issues, like how social democracy can kind of work. Like she seems to believe that, you know, there's some kind of.
I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt on that.
It might be wrong. But as you say, all the points you made about the state of the left in America and how it's totally unprepared, disorganized, and a total clusterfuck really is all completely 100% on the nose. And that's the point though, that if like liberals or whatever she is, I don't think she's a Marxist. She might be, because she did have some kind of quite Marxist kind of, you know, opinions almost. But to me, she seems more like a social democrat or something. If she is social democrat or something like that, you know, obviously, then it's kind of funny that the social democrats can see through the American ultra left and the Maoists, the anarchists, the Trotskyists, the whateverists, the istists. You know, like, and if even the sock dems are looking through and laughing at you, then there's kind of something going wrong, isn't there? That's what I'm kind of getting at with that.
Mm-hmm. We have the Marxist-Leninist weapon of criticism and self-criticism. We can get rid of a bad style and keep the good.
More importantly, self-criticism, I think.
Exactly. You know, this is Maoism. If you want to be a Maoist...
Black cat and the white cat.
You know, she was not... She didn't say anything offensive about leftists there. I think she gave some good pointers.
Oh yeah, no, like points were definitely valid. I just disagree with her overall, you know, kind of opinion that she believes that Biden should win. But as somebody who's not an American, I don't know whether I can make that criticism. As I've said before, from an American perspective, I might be one of them people who do, you know, hold my nose and vote. I'm not over there. But in a similar situation now, if you gave me a general election now and the choice was between Keir Starmer and Boris Johnson, I don't know whether I could vote Starmer, just on the idea that getting the Tories out would be better. I don't think I could bring myself to do it, and I think I would have to vote third party, probably Communist Party.
Starmer is a lot.
Communist parties.
Starmer is a lot more of a cop than Johnson, by the way. Literally.
Yeah, exactly. That's what worries me. Well, not just that, but like, you know, the spy cops bill and how willing they were all to accept that. the Labour Liberals kind of says it all, doesn't it? Really.
As for criticism, do it in good time. Don't get into the habit of criticising only after the event. Chairman Mao.
Very profound.
I think we should conclude.
That's the thing, isn't it? We should always, yeah.
So I think personally,
comrades.
yeah, definitely. The rage on this video is not warranted, but I think it's funny how she calls it right at the start. She's like, this video.
We're going to get called Contrapoint simps now for this, for agreeing with some of her takes.
Oh no.
Anyway,
yeah.
Thank you very much, guys, for tuning in, having a look at
good night, comrades.
us just pissing around, like taking jabs or whatever.
Yeah, if you enjoyed it, tell us, we'll make more.
Yeah. Good night, everyone.